We're here today for another episode of Brain Cherries, a series of podcasts where we will discuss interesting topics and ideas around startups, innovation, art, and music. I'm Lucrezia, and here with me today is my co-host Erika, who is joining in from sunny London.
Hi Lucrezia, how are you?
Well, I'm good, but it's raining outside, and you just told me that it's sunny in London, so for once, it's the weather is better in the UK than in Italy. But sometimes it happens, so okay. You can have this one Sunday, sunny Sunday.
I've never seen so much sun in London in the past 3 weeks of lockdown, honestly.
I want to start with something that I know you're gonna be really excited about. I just found out before we started recording. So Lady Gaga, together with Global Citizen, they organized the One World Together at Home. So it's a huge concert worldwide to combat COVID-19. And so basically she put together a whole lot of artists like Adam Lambert, Alicia Keys, Black Coffees, Billie Joe Armstrong herself, Lady Gaga, and each of them sang their songs from home. And then in between you have information about the COVID and what's going on around the world. It's for free. I'm gonna send you the link afterwards, but it's like an 8 hours concert. It's quite amazing.
I saw about it, and honestly looks gorgeous. The lineup is incredible. Hopefully we'll continue today, or they will do some replay.
Yeah, no, it is. At the link of this article that I was reading, you have the whole 8 hours concert. But anyways, what are you gonna talk to us about today, Erika?
So today is a very exciting topic. I've just finished reading this book called The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less by Barry Schwartz, who is an American psychologist and a professor at the Swarthmore College in the US. And this book is a bit old. It was written in 2005, but it's crazy how relevant his theories are even to date. So the book talks about why the increased amount of choices we face every day, instead of making us happier and giving us more freedom, they actually make us sadder and more dissatisfied with the choices we make. The book starts with a story of himself going to buy a pair of jeans. And this guy hasn't been outside to buy a pair of jeans for a couple of years, so he goes into a shop and asks for a pair of jeans. The clerk there asks, "What type of jeans do you want?" And he replies, "Well, I don't know, just some jeans." And then, they go on in this conversation, and, he's proposed different types of jeans, like booty cut, high waist, low waist, wide leg, narrow legs. And the guy is very confused and doesn't know what to do, because in his old world, there was only one type of jeans that he could buy. And so he starts thinking, okay, maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe I should try out all these different options. And so he starts trying them. He spends 2 hours in the shop, and then he leaves the shop with objectively a better pair of jeans than the one he used to buy. However, he feels very unhappy, and he doesn't understand why. Being a psychologist is trying to explain to himself what's going on, and so Barry decides to spend the next couple of years trying to understand and give scientific evidence to why he was feeling so dissatisfied, although objectively he had a better pair of jeans than the one he used to buy in the past. The theory of the book is that with this increased amount of choices, first, we are paralyzed, so most of the time we actually don't make any choice. And then if we end up choosing, we're actually more dissatisfied due to increased expectations. So our expectation about what is a good pair of jeans has, of course, increased now that we know there are so many options. And also about opportunity costs. So what are all the other jeans that I'm missing out? Now maybe I've tried only 10, but what about the other 50 that I haven't tried? And so this really causes a lot of dissatisfaction in people. And actually the people that are mostly dissatisfied are those called maximisers. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about who are the maximizers, who are the satisficers, so we can find out what Lucrezia is, if she's a satisficer or a maximizer.
I can't wait to find out. So tell me more.
So a maximizer is someone that doesn't stop until they have evaluated all the options that are potentially the best option for the type of problem or the type of product that they're trying to buy. A satisficer instead is someone that as soon as they find an option that meets the requirement that they have in mind, they choose. in the end, a satisficer is someone that can use some sort of heuristic or some sort of shortcut to take a decision, to try not to spend, an endless amount of time on a decision, whereas a maximizer is what we would define like a perfectionist, someone that tries to find the perfect solution. So Lucrezia, of course, not everyone is a satisficer or a maximizer in every situation, so it depends also on the type of decision. Have you decided who you are and what type of decisions maybe you are more of a maximizer or you're more of a satisficer?
This is interesting. I think another variable that we might want to add is time. So I guess throughout life, we might start off being more maximizers and then shift to being more satisficers or the other way around. And I think this is in general what happened to me. So when I was younger, I was quite obsessed with perfection in general. And now when I started doing more and more things, working at different projects, teaching, I found out that being maximizers is just not cost effective, I think. So I guess you really spend a lot of time and energy if you try to obsess to find the best thing, also because it's impossible to do that, especially related to some topics. So for example, I don't know, I'm thinking about online buying. So if you want something, you go to a shop, you already have a lot of different options, but then if you think about what you could get by buying online, so from other countries, then the choice grows exponentially. I don't think being a maximizer is really cost efficient, and I think it makes you waste a lot of time and energy. So I think in right now, in most facets of my life, I am a satisficer.
And also consider that, as you said in the example of online shopping, you may not be able to actually evaluate all the options. If you think about how many options you have for food, and that's why, maximizers with an increased array of choices are really dissatisfied, because they can never get to the point where they can evaluate all the options. And so eventually they are basically paralyzed and they end up not choosing. And yeah, something very interesting that the book was talking about regarding paralysis of choice and how this is impacted by the array of choices that we have. They were citing an experiment regarding jams. So they were presenting a certain amount of samples to some experiment participants, and in one display there were 6 jams, and in the other display there were 24. And the exciting result is that whenever there was the small selection, 30% of the people decided to buy one of the jams, whereas in the other display with 24, only 3% of those exposed to the larger selection decided to buy. And this is a clear indication that most of the time, whenever we have more choice, we actually end up not choosing at all, which is of course a disaster for many sellers, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it's also a matter of priorities and how well you can prioritize the different things that you have to do. Because of course, like for the maximizers who just want to check out all the options that they have, it means that like they're not prioritizing something else. So for example, I can think of one situation in which I was more of a maximizer. So I've lately decided to change jobs, so I'm quite excited about that, and I'm going to kind of start a new phase of my life, I guess. And in my choice about either moving towards this next phase, so accepting this new offer or staying where I was, I think I was really much of a maximizer, because I tried to tackle each single characteristic of the job that I was offered, each single characteristic of also the lifestyle that surrounds that kind of job and the different location where I'll be. And so in this sense, I was really aiming for the best of everything, but because job and career is a priority for me. And so in this sense, it was something that I felt like even if I was spending a lot of time thinking about all the different facets of the two scenarios, it was worth it because it's my priority. Whereas for other things, we should understand that some things are not that big of a priority. So I don't really mind whether I bought the best pair of jeans ever, because it's just jeans and to me it's not a priority.
Yeah.
Of course, then for other people, it might be that priority is the jeans and not the job, or everyone has their own priorities, but I think the fact of being able to prioritize is really important when facing this paradox of choice.
Absolutely. And actually, it's interesting what the book highlights. It seems that with an increased amount of choices, more people are becoming maximizers in more areas. So, someone that may start off as a satisficer when he's presented with more options. And so maybe even in your case, if instead of having, 3, 4 choices that you maybe had selected, you were presented with like 20 appealing choices, how much more difficult would it have been to actually evaluate them on the same scale of detail that you have done with these three jobs. And so I think it's very important to consider the case where sometimes it's actually not that good to have all these choices.
And so are maximizers then people that actually tend to postpone their decision until they can think that they have all the options in front of them?
Yeah, from what the book highlights, absolutely yes. So they tend to want to evaluate all the possible options. And when that's possible, they spend the time that they need to, and then they stop when they've actually found the option that is the best across all the different characteristics. If they can't, because the options maybe are millions, then they end up potentially not choosing at all. And then the interesting thing, the second side effect is that even if you end up choosing, because of opportunity cost, and so all the other options that you may have not considered because of time or because you couldn't, when you think about all the other options that you have left out, this causes a lot of dissatisfaction and a lot of self-blame, because you were forced to choose a kind of less perfect, less maximized option as a result of like not having time, not having enough resources to scan through all the options that you've missed out on.
But then there is someone who is trying to make our lives easier in helping to reduce choice, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've seen it in many, many areas. One area that I find super interesting because I'm passionate about it is the food industry, and in particular the one on retailers. If you look at what retailers are actually most successful in the recent years, you can think about Lidl, you can think about Aldi, and what the strategy that they went for is a very, very small selection of products, but very high quality. So you may not find 20 versions of brie cheese. You may find one version of brie cheese, but that one version, it's a good quality. Of course, this strategy reduces choice, but also has a high quality. So, in terms of characteristics of your choice, if quality is important for you, that's, it would get an 8 or 9. And so it actually makes people, faster with the choice and also much happier. It's proven very successful. So successful that so many other retailers that didn't go for that strategy at the beginning, like think about, the Tesco of the situation, or like in Italy, for example, we have a very good example of it, like Esselunga, where it's famous for having a wide variety of choice. Some of these players are actually trying to go for the strategy where they reduce the selection of products. And this, of course, apart from increasing sales, as we've said before, because it reduces this block that you have for taking a decision, it also reduces costs for these retailers, because you have to manage a smaller amount of products. So I think it's a win-win on both sides.
What are the implications of this phenomenon of paradox of choice, like applied widely to everyday life and decisions?
Yeah, one thing that the book was highlighting, which I found super interesting, is the idea of shift of responsibility. Who is actually making the selection of what are the eligible options? Two examples really struck with me, and one was example of pensions. If your employer offers you 100 pension funds versus 5 pension funds, it means that you are the one that then has to go and scan through all the 100 pension funds and decide which one is the right for you. Whereas if they choose, they offer you only 5, you have an implicit assumption that they've already selected the best ones because they have the knowledge to do it. And so in the end, the shift of responsibility for, the quality of the first scan of choices is on the employer, versus if you have many choices, is on the employee. And similarly, think about when you go to the doctor, you explain what your problem is, and then the doctor says, okay, I think you can do 1, you can do 2, you can do 3, you can do 4. What do you want to do? So now, it's the patient that has the really burden of responsibility for doing research and making the choice on what is best for his health. Whereas, honestly, because the doctor has the knowledge, is the doctor that should make, the decision and should tell you what to do. So it's really interesting and as to where the burden of responsibility is being shifted when there are so many options presented to the consumer. And then maybe one final comment is, what can we do to actually make this better? Is decreasing the amount of choices really the way to go? Or maybe there's something else that we should do? Maybe we don't have to reduce the choices. Maybe we just need to improve the way we are making decisions. And maybe improving the way we're making decisions is making them a bit more unconscious. Changing the environment so that the choices are easier. One interesting example that I have is like you're trying to decide what to eat and you want to eat healthy. If you have a piece of vegetable placed in front of you, and like that's the whole you can see every day, maybe it's a bit easier for you to choose that over, going for a piece of chocolate that is like hidden, 3 cupboards away and you have to, take a stair to like go find it. You have the same options, like you could go and get the cookie or that brownie that is hidden away, but then what option is actually easier to choose? Maybe this is the way to go. Maybe it's just making the right choices easier. But then, of course, there is also a topic of like who decides what is the right choice. So I think you have to have already almost a preconception.
So I do agree. There are so many tricks to make your own environment. I mean, even if they are tricks that you play yourself, but still they work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason why they work is because even if it's a trick or a strategy that we did for ourselves, so we know that we did it at some point in the past, but it still works because most of our decisions, almost all of them, are actually driven by unconscious thoughts rather than conscious ones. And this is a really interesting topic that connects really well with what you were saying, and I hope we'll be able to explore it in a future episode. It has a lot to do with neuroscience that studies the brain and how our conscious and unconscious mind works, and what's the relationship of conscious and unconscious mind also connected to the actions that we take. So that it's a huge field that has seen great improvements in the past few years. It's something that actually I got back to studying this field in the past few weeks. So I'm quite excited about it, and I really hope that we can explore this further.
Absolutely, let's do it. Yeah, so I think this is the end of our episode.
Yeah, time is up. We covered so many things today, Erika.
Time is up.
We were true to the reason why we created this podcast. So we started off with music and then we ended up with psychology and neuroscience. So I hope our listeners won't be confused, but just happy.
Lucrezia, you know what I was thinking? I think we should create a playlist that someone can listen to as a side to the podcast. So they listen to the podcast and then the rest of the week when there is no podcast, they can listen to the playlist.
That's awesome.
Because we're both very passionate about music, so I think that it would yield some very interesting results.
This is a great live idea by Erika. I swear we didn't talk about it before. So.
We actually haven't discussed it. I'm just
But that's how our ideas spark. It always happens. Every time me and her, even if we currently live in 2 different countries, we've been living apart for like 3 years now, but it happens all the time. Like every time we speak, some new ideas pop up, and that's the great thing about our friendship, I guess.
So I guess I'll talk to you next week. And stay safe, everyone, and enjoy this time at home.
Bye, guys. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.